Now, it wasn't all plain sailing, was it? Because I read somewhere that you and your brother Paul, who I remember working for Stephen Little as well, lost 14 grand. Was it betting on a photograph at Sandown?
It was a steward's enquiry. Yeah, Paul worked for Steve Little. I guess this was probably, might have been early 90s, 89, 90. And there was a steward's enquiry after the Whitbread Cup. And so Paul rang me, and I was sat in my office, asked me my opinion. I probably didn't know, I didn't have an office in those days. So wherever I was sat, asked me my opinion. I said, whatever I said, there's no way they'll chuck this out. So I think Paul started backing it at like 3 on, and then it went sort of 6-4, and so more on, and then it went to evens, so we had more on it. And I think the total was about 14 grand we had on, which is probably half our total wealth combined at that stage. And they chucked the winner out who would be backing, and that was a huge loss. It's funny in those days, you just seem to get over it quite quickly though. I think sort of 1 or 2 stern phone calls between us on his way home, but I think we just sort of shrugged our shoulders.
Well, he didn't have to work for Stephen for free for a year or anything.
No, well, he was obviously working for somebody for free because there was no money coming in. Yeah. Thankfully, I don't think he had the bigger percentage of that bet than I did. Thankfully.
Now, strangely, but you were one of the first ones with the 0898 numbers.
Yeah.
So in 1992, you saved up. We'll ask about this in a minute. By pure chance and good fortune, you started a premium rate tipping line. So you're obviously confident enough in your prowess to sell your tips to the general public. What were the circumstances of what were these good fortune and pure chance?
Well, I think I'd gone through sort of 2 or 3, I call them my reckless years, between probably 1989 and the end of 1991. I played poker, and I had 2 big disadvantages when I played poker. One is that I was awful, and the 2 is I didn't realise how bad I was. So whatever I was winning from betting horses, I was losing double from betting horses. Playing poker. I got married, which had lasted about as long as the marriage lasted about as long as the wedding. So end of 1991, I'm now living in a house shared by 4 people. I'm just studying form. I am scraping a living from just form studying. Doing a bit of work for Steve, going racing, probably with my dad. And just, sort of think myself as a pro punter, but not making any massive money, but, potentially going in the right direction. Come forward to 1992, my cousin, her entrepreneur, he's at a party in Bristol and he meets a guy who works for a telecommunications company. And this telecommunications company dealt with premium rate telephone lines, and they tell him there's 2 types of lines that make good money. One is sex lines, and one is lines that give racing information. So my cousin thinks, right, opportunity. So he's driving home from this party. He was one of the very few people who had a mobile phone in those days. So it rings me about 11:30 at night. He said, Mark, come and see me in the morning. So I went and saw him in the morning. He had at the time, he had a financial services business, worked in the centre of Bristol, prestigious offices. So I walked into the offices and he told me the story about meeting this guy. And he said, Mark, I think that's something you could do. So I sort of said I hadn't really had any knowledge of premium rate lines, had never rung them. So I had a copy of the Racing Post, Sporting Life, and there was a couple advertising that day, and we rang them. The first one was, some guy in Newmarket saying, good morning, just come back from the Newmarket. And mind you, people were paying £1.50 a minute to listen to this. Just come back from the Gallops, glorious morning, sun was shining, bumped into Henry Cecil, Michael Stout. I've got a lovely horse for you in a minute. I'll tell you all about that in 3 or 4 minutes. I thought, how could anyone listen to this? Another one, there was a guy talking about what he did last night, and after yesterday's 4-5 winner, that he'd had a bottle of champagne. They were awful. I couldn't believe that anybody, one, was thick enough to ring these, and 2, if they were getting conned because they were just dreadful. So I said, whatever they're doing, I knew I could do a lot better.
So that was
1992.
In 1992.
Yeah.
So why did you? Well, that's why you did it. So you weren't making enough money punting them yourself.
Well, I was making money. I was making money, but what was enough money? I was single. My exes were virtually 0, and I was living quite a good life. But whether I didn't know where that would lead to. I guess I was 26, 27. So I had no, I wanted to make money. I thought possibly I would do over the longer term, and I'd make. But you don't know how it's going to pan out. And now somebody's potentially saying to me, look, we can start this, and you're not going to have to use any more brains than you're using for your current job. So I thought there really wasn't anything for me to lose, and the other lines was really bad. Couldn't believe it, how atrocious they was. There was only one line at the time that I can remember who was good, and that was a guy called Patrick Veach, who was really knew his stuff. He's very good. So the advantage that I had working with my cousin was that I left this house where I was living with a desk in the corner of the room with a telephone and one form book. I moved into his prestigious offices in Bristol. I had my own office there. We installed SIS. I've got a secretary taking care of my every whim, making my lunch and bringing me coffee. And I was now just in a perfect situation, just to study form all day. And I would have done it for nothing.
So your results made the line successful, otherwise people would stop ringing. As it's so long ago, can we talk about the sort of figures that you were copying in those days?
Yeah.
Through it?
I can remember we started on August 22nd, 1992. I think the first day you had no shop window, so the only way people learned about you was from advertising. So I think the first day we probably spent £150 on an advert in the Racing Post, might have generated revenue of £10. So that's a massive loss. But if you do okay, then there's a potential that people will ring back, and that's what we were relying on. So my message was completely different. I kept it really short, which cut obviously revenue, but made people trust you, and I think that was really important to get people trust. And also, completely different to most other people, I was telling them why we were betting this horse. So I was giving them reasons, and I wanted to give people intelligent reasons that they were not going to get elsewhere. So I, explain something that I'd seen or read or understood about the form that they couldn't see anywhere else. So we basically, by about December, we were breaking level. And then 1993, I think we placed, beginning 1993, that's where it all turned. I think we played a big advert in the Racing Post on Saturday afternoon, or I think probably the Sporting Life more likely. I think I advised 4 bets. I think 3 of them won, sort of 4-1, 8-1 and 12-1. And from that point onwards, we sort of created a lot more people to call, and then it just generated and generated. So to answer your question, so I ran the premium rate line for 2 years, and when we started, we were taking about £200 a month, and I think our best month in that period of time was revenue of about 35,000.
And you had an association with Alan Potts at the time?
No. Alan came later. So Alan wasn't with me when I had a premium rate line. I changed it. Do you want me to talk about changing it, or do you want me to talk about Alan Potts?
No, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay, well, so after 2 years of doing this premium rate line, and of course you're only getting paid for talking, so that's not necessarily a problem, but what it leads you to do, you're under pressure to find stuff every single day, even though on days there may not be stuff to find. So, and you're doing 2 messages, one at 7 p.m. in the evening, another at 11 o'clock in the day. And I just found it all too stressful. And that sounds really weird, because there's lots of people who've got stressful jobs, but it was a lot of pressure.
35 grand a month.
No, not everyone. And I wasn't keeping all of the money either. There's a story about that as well. When I started with my cousin, I said, how are we going to split it? And he said, well, we'll go 60-40. And it wasn't until we got the first paycheck did I realise that he was getting 60 and I was getting 40. So after 2 years, I changed it. So then, this was a big day. This was a day worth. So I said to my cousin, right, I'm not doing the premium rate lines anymore. We'll put it on a standard rate telephone line, and people can pay us a fee. So overnight, I just stopped it and went on my premium rate line. I said, right, I'm not doing this any longer. But you want to pay us a fee, you can pay us a fee, and you can get the information on a standard rate telephone line, which I think was in everyone's advantage, apart from the people who were ringing from work, who were obviously very disappointed. So we changed that, and then the next day, I can't remember how many people subscribed, but we took £107,000.
Were you still backing them? And did you even?
Yeah, I was still back. I was still betting horses, but I was still betting. But my priority was absolutely doing a good job for my clients. So if you think about the business to that stage, I had my cousin ran it. He was sort of like taking care of the business. My job was to get up in my office at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd stay there till 8 o'clock at night, doing something that I had done for free, and all I had to do is study horses. and I could think about ideas. It was absolute dream job.
Okay, now so before we go on to Alan Potts,
Sorry, Alan. Yeah.
Steve Goff.
Yeah. Well, let's
That's the
talk
name.
about.
We want to talk about Alan first.
Yeah, I'll talk about Alan because
Right, okay.
So when I went, so Alan I met at Cheltenham. I liked Alan a great deal. A huge integrity, which was most important to me. Very honest, straightforward, straight talking guy. Knew his stuff. I was predominantly National Hunt. He was probably more on the flat. He joined me, I think, the week of Goodwood. He did very, very well. He understood about draw biases, but not before everyone, but before a lot of people. Very value orientated. Again, it was really important to me that he sort of bought into what I was trying to do. My clients, customers were really important to me, and he bought into that, and he used to come in and sit in my office and talk to my clients once a month via phone. So Alan worked with me for 2 or 3 years, and I learned stuff off Alan for sure.
Now, Steve Goff is somebody. It's the reason we got in contact with each other, because you've seen it in the previous interview. So he seems to have been a big influence on a lot of people.
Steve, a massive influence, yeah. So Steve Goff, yeah, very, very clever guy. My brother was, by this stage, this is probably late 90s, I guess. My brother was an on-course bookmaker, and he used to go to Wolverhampton on a Saturday night, and he met this guy. And he'd come back and he said, Mark, there's this guy you should meet. I said, yeah, why? And he said, he's really clever. And I said, okay. So I said, well, tell him to ring me. I can't believe I said that. Tell him to ring me. So my brother's gone off to the races and said, Steve, ring Mark. Steve said, I'm too busy. So I went to Wolverhampton and rang and met Steve. And when you meet Steve, I don't know if you ever met him. No. He's you wouldn't meet him and think you're in the, this is a genius. I can remember meeting him at Wolverhampton in the betting shop at Wolverhampton races. And he's got a scrumpled up racing poster, like a little pen behind his ear, 12 betting slips. And I sort of started chatting to him, wasn't really getting a lot out of him. And I said, I was getting cut to the chase. I said, why'd you win then, Steve? And he sort of, in his sort of Birmingham accent, he said, I don't know why, I want to just do. And, and I just thought, oh, Christ, this is going to be hard work. But I sort of took his phone number, started ringing him, and realised that he was doing stuff that I wasn't even thinking about with sectional times. He was sort of timing horses from different points on the track. He was timing horses from hurdle to hurdle. I then went to his office and home in Shrewsbury. His office had TVs all over it, all sort of linked up to video cassette recorders, recording everything, looking at horses from different furlongs, parts of the track. Absolute genius, total genius. And much of what I do today, everything I do today stems from my meeting with Steve.